What happens when a simple morning show interview transforms into one of the most uncomfortable moments in television history? When pleasantries give way to probing questions, and a Hollywood star decides she has had enough. This is the story of Anne Hathaway's shocking exit from the Today Show. And trust me, you need to hear every single word that was exchanged before that dramatic walk-off. But before we get into it, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me whose side you are on after you hear this whole thing, because this one is going to divide people. The Today Show studio had its usual energy that morning. Cameras were positioned, the lighting was perfect, and Anne Hathaway was sitting across from Sheinelle Jones for what was supposed to be a standard promotional interview. Anne was there to talk about her latest project, a film that had been generating Oscar buzz, and everything started exactly as you would expect. Sheinelle opened with a warm smile. "Welcome. It is so good to have you here. Congratulations on the film. It is getting incredible reviews." "Thank you so much," Anne replied, her voice bright and engaged. It was a labor of love, truly. The entire cast and crew poured everything into this project. Sheinelle nodded enthusiastically. "You can feel that passion on screen. Your performance is being called one of your best. How does it feel to be back in this kind of dramatic territory?" Anne leaned forward slightly, her hands gesturing as she spoke. "You know, I think as an actor you are always searching for material that challenges you, that makes you dig deeper into yourself. This character was someone who had experienced real loss, real pain, and I wanted to honor that truthfully." The conversation continued smoothly for several minutes. They discussed the film's themes, the director's vision, Anne's preparation for the role. Sheinelle asked about working with her co-stars, and Anne shared a charming anecdote about a particularly emotional scene that had everyone on set in tears. It was textbook morning television, light enough for viewers having their coffee, substantial enough to feel worthwhile. Then Sheinelle shifted gears. "You know, Anne, one thing I have always admired about you is how open you have been about the ups and downs of fame. You have talked about dealing with public perception, especially during certain periods of your career." Anne's expression remained pleasant, but something in her posture changed slightly. She sat back just an inch. "I think transparency is important, yes. We are all human beings trying to navigate our lives." "Absolutely," Sheinelle continued. "And I think a lot of people connected with your honesty about that period. Let us call it the backlash era, when it seemed like the internet just turned on you. What was that really like for you internally?" Anne took a breath, her smile now a bit more measured. "It was difficult. I think anyone who has experienced public criticism on that scale would say the same. But I also learned a lot from it." Sheinelle pressed on. "What do you think caused it, though? I mean, you went from America's sweetheart to, and I am just being honest about what the narrative was, someone people found irritating or try hard. Do you think there was something you were doing that contributed to that shift?" The studio felt different now. The ease of moments before had evaporated. Anne's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I think that is a complicated question, Sheinelle. Public perception is shaped by so many factors, many of which have nothing to do with the actual person." "But surely," Sheinelle said, leaning in, "surely you must have reflected on your own behavior during that time. I mean, some people said you came across as overeager, too rehearsed in interviews, maybe not as authentic as you thought you were being." Anne's eyes narrowed just slightly. "What exactly are you asking me?" Sheinelle maintained her professional demeanor, but did not back down. "I am asking if you take any responsibility for how you were perceived. If you look back and think, maybe I could have been more genuine, or less performative." Anne's voice remained controlled, but there was an edge to it now. "I think calling someone performative for being enthusiastic or articulate is interesting. Would you ask a male actor if he was being too try-hard for expressing passion about his work?" Sheinelle held up a hand. "This is not about gender, Anne. This is about you specifically, and how you came across to millions of people. Is it not, though? Anne replied, her tone sharpening, because I do not recall male actors being torn apart for being excited about winning awards or for giving thoughtful answers in interviews. That seems to be something reserved for women who dare to appear too eager or too prepared. I think you are deflecting, Sheinelle said. The criticism you faced was not just from men. Women were very vocal about finding you inauthentic. Anne's composure was cracking now. Inauthentic. That is the word, is it not? If a woman is polished, she is fake. If she is emotional, she is too much. If she is composed, she is cold. Tell me, Sheinelle, what is the acceptable amount of personality a woman in the public eye is allowed to have? Sheinelle's expression hardened. I am just trying to have an honest conversation here. Are you? Anne shot back. Because it feels like you invited me here to promote my work and instead you are relitigating a painful period of my life, asking me to justify my personality to you and everyone watching. That is not what I am doing, Sheinelle insisted. I am asking questions that I think a lot of people have wondered about. This is what interviews are. Honest discussions. Honest discussions require good faith, Anne said, her voice rising slightly. What you are doing is asking me to perform some kind of public self-flagellation, to admit that I deserve to be mocked and dismissed because I committed the crime of being enthusiastic in public. You are putting words in my mouth, Sheinelle responded. I never said you deserved anything. I am simply asking if you have any self-awareness about how you were perceived. The studio crew was frozen, unsure whether to cut away or let this play out. This was live television at its most unpredictable. Self-awareness, Anne repeated, almost laughing but without any humor. I have spent years being self-aware, Sheinelle. I have analyzed every interview, every red carpet moment, every acceptance speech, wondering what I did wrong, why people hated me for simply existing in my career. And you know what I realized? I did nothing wrong. I was myself, and that was somehow unforgivable. Sheinelle tried to regain control of the interview. Look, I think we are getting off track here. Let us talk about the film again. No, Anne said firmly. No, I do not think we should just move on. You brought this up. You decided this was the conversation you wanted to have. So, let us have it. Anne, Sheinelle said, her voice taking on a warning tone. I understand you are upset, but we need to keep this professional. Professional? Anne's voice was incredulous now. You ambushed me with questions designed to make me defend my existence, my personality, my right to be excited about my own life and career. And now you want to talk about professionalism? I did not ambush you, Sheinelle said firmly. These are questions based on public record, on things people have openly discussed about you. Things people have said about me, Anne corrected, not things I have done. There is a difference, and the fact that you cannot see that difference is exactly the problem. The tension was suffocating. Every person in the studio could feel this careening towards something unprecedented. Sheinelle's expression remained composed, but her voice carried a defensive edge. Anne, I am a journalist. My job is to ask questions that viewers want answered. If that makes you uncomfortable, then maybe that is something you need to examine. Anne stared at her for a long moment. The camera captured every micro-expression, every flicker of emotion crossing her face. Do you know what is fascinating about this moment right now? You are framing your line of questioning as journalism, as if tearing down a woman for being herself is somehow in the public interest. That is not what I am doing, Sheinelle insisted, but her voice had lost some of its certainty. Then what are you doing? Anne asked, genuinely seeming to want an answer. Because from where I am sitting, you invited me here under the pretense of discussing my work, and instead, you have spent the last several minutes asking me to account for why people did not like me. That is not journalism, Sheinelle. That is just cruelty with a professional veneer. Now you are being dramatic, Sheinelle said, and immediately the words hung in the air like a mistake neither could take back. Anne's eyes widened. Dramatic? There it is. Another word used to dismiss women when they refuse to play along. When we object to being treated poorly, we are being dramatic. When we stand up for ourselves, we are being difficult. I did not mean it like that, Sheinelle started, but Anne was not having it. How did you mean it then? Anne asked. Because it sounded exactly like what it is. You are uncomfortable that I am not shrinking, that I am not giving you the humble, apologetic interview subject you were hoping for. Someone who would nod along and admit that yes, I was too much, too annoying, too present in my own life. You are twisting everything I am saying, Sheinelle said, frustration creeping into her voice now. I am trying to have a real conversation with you about your career and your public image, and you are turning this into some kind of gender politics lecture. Anne leaned forward, her voice sharp and clear. My public image is gender politics, Sheinelle. The fact that I was eviscerated for doing exactly what countless male actors do without consequence, that is gender politics. The fact that you think it is appropriate to grill me about why people found me unlikable, that is gender politics. You cannot separate those things. So nothing is ever your fault, Sheinelle challenged. That is what you are saying? You bear no responsibility for how you are perceived? Anne exhaled slowly, visibly trying to maintain her composure. I take responsibility for my choices, for my work, for how I treat people. What I do not take responsibility for is other people's projections, insecurities, and need to tear down women who appear confident or successful. That is not on me. But when millions of people have the same reaction to you, Sheinelle pressed, at some point you have to ask yourself why. That is not projection, that is pattern. Is it? Anne fired back. Or is it mob mentality? Is it the internet finding an acceptable target and deciding it is open season? Because that is what happened to me, Sheinelle. I became a punching bag, a meme, a punchline. Not because I did anything wrong, but because people decided I was annoying. And the crime of being annoying, apparently, justifies years of mockery and cruelty. People criticize celebrities all the time, Sheinelle said. That comes with the territory. There is a difference, Anne said, her voice intense, between criticism and dehumanization. There is a difference between not liking someone's performance in a film and deciding that person deserves to be humiliated simply for existing. And the fact that you are equating those things right now tells me everything I need to know about how you view this conversation. Sheinelle's jaw tightened. I think you are being incredibly defensive and unwilling to engage in any kind of self-reflection. Self-reflection, Anne repeated, shaking her head. I have spent years reflecting, Sheinelle. Years questioning everything about myself, wondering what was wrong with me, why I was unlovable to so many people. And you know what that kind of relentless self-examination does to a person? It destroys you from the inside. It makes you doubt every word, every gesture, every authentic impulse you have. Then maybe, Sheinelle said slowly, maybe that kind of reflection helped you grow. Maybe the criticism, even if it was harsh, pushed you to evolve. Anne's face showed genuine shock. Are you actually suggesting that being torn apart publicly was good for me? That I should be grateful for years of cruelty because it made me grow? I am saying that adversity can lead to growth, Sheinelle replied. Many people have said they appreciate the more grounded version of you that emerged after that period. The more grounded version, Anne said quietly, dangerously. You mean the version that learned to be smaller, the version that learned to apologize for taking up space, the version that became so careful, so controlled, so afraid of saying the wrong thing that I barely recognized myself. That sounds like growth to me, Sheinelle said. That sounds like maturity. No, Anne said firmly. That sounds like trauma. That sounds like what happens when you teach someone that being themselves is unacceptable. The studio was absolutely silent except for their voices. The producers were frantically trying to decide whether to cut to commercial, but this was compulsive viewing. Train wreck television that no one could look away from. Sheinelle tried a different approach, softening her tone. Anne, I am not your enemy here. I am asking questions that come from a place of genuine curiosity about your journey. Do not do that, Anne said, cutting her off. Do not pretend this is some supportive, girl power conversation when you have spent the entire interview trying to get me to admit I deserved what happened to me. That is not support. That is just gaslighting with better lighting. That is unfair, Sheinelle protested. I have been nothing but professional. Professional, Anne said. That word again. You hide behind professionalism like it excuses the questions you are asking, like it makes it okay to pick at someone's wounds and call it journalism. These are not wounds I created, Sheinelle shot back, her composure finally cracking. I did not create the backlash against you. I am just acknowledging it existed and trying to understand it. By asking me to explain it, Anne demanded. By asking me to justify why I was hated? How is that understanding anything? That is just asking the victim to explain why people hurt them. Victim? Sheinelle's voice rose. You are calling yourself a victim of online criticism? Anne, there are real victims in the world facing real problems. Anne stood up abruptly, her microphone cord pulled taut. There it is, the hierarchy of suffering. Because my pain happened in public, because it happened to someone privileged, it does not count. It is not real enough. I should just shut up and take it because other people have it worse. That is not what I said, Sheinelle insisted, but she looked shaken now. It is exactly what you implied, Anne said, and it is what people always say when they want to dismiss someone's experience. Just because I am fortunate in many ways does not mean I do not deserve basic human dignity. It does not mean I should accept being dehumanized. No one is dehumanizing you right now, Sheinelle said. We are just having a difficult conversation. A difficult conversation I did not consent to, Anne said. I came here to talk about my work. Instead, you decided to put me on trial for the crime of being Anne Hathaway. And now you are upset that I am not cooperating with my own prosecution. You are being absurd, Sheinelle said flatly. This is a morning show interview, not a trial. Then why do I feel like I am defending my right to exist? Anne asked. Why do I feel like nothing I say will be good enough because you have already decided who I am? I have not decided anything, Sheinelle said. I am asking you to reflect on your own role in your own story. And I am telling you, Anne said, her voice shaking now with emotion, that asking someone to find the silver lining in their own public humiliation, to identify what they did to deserve cruelty, is not reflection, it is victim blaming, and I will not do it. Not for you, not for your viewers, not for anyone. Fine, Sheinelle said, her voice cold now. Then I think we are done here. I think we have been done for a while, Anne replied. You just did not want to admit it. The air between them was electric with hostility. Neither woman blinked. Neither woman backed down. The interview had become something else entirely. A battle of wills playing out on national television, and everyone watching knew they were witnessing something that would be replayed and analyzed for years to come. Sheinelle gathered herself, clearly trying to regain control of what had become an uncontrollable situation. Anne, if you would just sit back down, we can try to find some common ground here. Common ground? Anne remained standing, her voice carrying across the studio. Sheinelle, there is no common ground between someone trying to defend their humanity and someone demanding they justify why they deserve it. That is not a conversation. That is an interrogation. You are making this so much bigger than it needs to be, Sheinelle said, exasperation clear in her tone. I asked you some tough questions. That is what interviewers do. If you cannot handle that, then maybe you should not be doing press. Anne's laugh was sharp and humorless. Cannot handle it. Right, because the problem is my inability to handle being disrespected, not your decision to disrespect me in the first place. Do you hear yourself right now? I have been nothing but respectful, Sheinelle insisted, but even she seemed to realize how hollow that sounded given the past 15 minutes. You ambushed me with questions designed to make me admit I was the problem. Anne said, her voice steady despite the emotion behind it. You framed my enthusiasm as a character flaw. You suggested that being torn apart online was somehow good for me. You compared my experience to some hierarchy of real suffering, as if pain is a competition. And now you are telling me I cannot handle tough questions. No, Sheinelle. I can handle tough questions. What I cannot handle, what I will not handle, is being told that my mistreatment was my fault. No one is saying that, Sheinelle replied, but her voice lacked conviction. You have been saying exactly that, Anne countered, just in more polite language. That is how this works. You dress up cruelty in professional language and expect the person on the receiving end to smile and nod along. Well, I am done smiling, I am done nodding, I am done pretending that any of this is okay. Sheinelle looked directly into the camera for a moment, as if seeking support from the viewers at home, then back to Anne. I think emotions are running very high right now. Maybe we should take a breath. My emotions are perfectly appropriate for this situation, Anne said. You do not get to police how I respond to being treated this way. That is just another way of telling women to be quiet, to be pleasant, to not make a fuss even when they are being torn down. I am not telling you to be quiet, Sheinelle said. I am trying to salvage what is left of this interview. There is nothing left to salvage, Anne said simply. You wanted a certain kind of interview, one where I would perform contrition and self-doubt for your audience. I am not going to give you that. I am not going to perform my own diminishment for anyone's entertainment. So what are you going to do then? Sheinelle asked, and there was a challenge in her voice. Just walk out? Make a scene? Anne reached down and unclipped her microphone with deliberate, calm movements. I am not making a scene, Sheinelle. I am making a choice. I am choosing not to participate in a conversation that treats my humanity as negotiable. I am choosing not to sit here and be asked to explain why I deserved cruelty. That is not making a scene. That is having boundaries. This is live television, Sheinelle said, and there was almost a plea in her voice now. You cannot just leave. Watch me, Anne said, placing the microphone on the chair. The crew members looked at each other in panic. One producer was frantically making cut motions with his hand, but no one moved to actually cut the feed. This was too unprecedented, too shocking. Anne, Sheinelle tried one more time, her voice strained. If you walk out of this interview, that is going to be the story. Not your film, not your performance, just this moment. Is that really what you want? Anne turned back to face her, and for the first time in several minutes, her expression softened slightly. You know what, Sheinelle? For years I have been terrified of moments like this. Terrified of being seen as difficult, or unprofessional, or too sensitive. I have bent over backwards to be likable, to be accommodating, to never rock the boat, and it did not matter. People still decided I was the problem. So if walking away from this interview makes me difficult, then I guess I am difficult. If standing up for myself makes me unprofessional, then I guess I am unprofessional. I would rather be those things than sit here one more minute pretending this is okay. Sheinelle's face was a mix of emotions, anger, embarrassment, maybe even a flicker of understanding, though she clearly was not ready to admit it. You are overreacting. No, Anne said quietly but firmly. I am reacting exactly as much as this situation deserves. You just are not used to women refusing to minimize their own mistreatment. The silence that followed was deafening. Anne stood there, no longer connected to any audio equipment, no longer bound to her seat, no longer playing the game that morning television required. She now looked at her notes, then at Anne, then at the camera. Her professional mask was cracking, uncertainty showing through. We still have 12 minutes left in this segment. Then I suggest you fill it with something other than asking your guest to explain why they deserve to be bullied, Anne said. With that, Anne turned and walked toward the exit of the studio area. The cameras followed her, unsure whether to cut away. Her posture was straight, her head held high. There was no dramatic storming off, no throwing of objects, no screaming. just a woman calmly removing herself from a situation that had become untenable. "Anne, please," Sheinelle called after her, and there was something raw in her voice now. Anne stopped but did not turn around. "You made this public. You made this the conversation. You own that." "I was just doing my job," Sheinelle said, and it sounded almost like she was trying to convince herself. Anne finally turned to look at her one last time. "Then maybe you need to ask yourself, what kind of job requires you to tear down the people you interview? Maybe you need to ask yourself if getting a viral moment is worth someone's dignity." And with that, Anne Hathaway walked off the Today Show set, leaving Sheinelle Jones sitting alone, cameras still rolling, a stunned crew unsure how to proceed, and millions of viewers at home witnessing one of the most dramatic moments in morning television history. Sheinelle sat there for a moment, visibly shaken, before turning to the camera. "We are going to take a quick break," she said, her voice unsteady. The feed cut to commercial, but the damage was done. So there you have it, the full story of what really went down between Anne Hathaway and Sheinelle Jones on the Today Show, a conversation that started as routine publicity and ended as something far more explosive. If you made it to the end of this video, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below answering this question. Do you think Anne was right to walk out, or should she have stayed and finished the interview? Let me know your thoughts, because I have a feeling people are going to be very divided on this one.